Let's move on to our next founder with blurry vision. And he actually did because he wore little glasses. Patrick Henry, another Virginian, great Virginian.
Yeah.
Second to Washington, the second greatest, or the penultimate Virginian that ever lived. Here's a little bit of biography about Patrick Henry beyond Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. He opposed ratification of the Constitution. Many of you probably know that because you're good students of history. Being in the liberty movement, you're smarter than people in the liberal or conservative movement. So you probably knew that. How many of you have been to Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Broad Street? You've seen the plaque. Yes, there's a plaque. The only memorabilia that survives that the Constitution, that the convention to ratify the Constitution in Virginia happened in Richmond is a plaque. It's about this wide and about that tall. How sad is that? It was one of the greatest debates in the history of man. Get a copy of it and read it. Read Henry's participation in the ratification debate if you want to learn about founders and what they thought a republic or what a limited government would and could and should be. Another thing you probably don't know about Patrick Henry, after he was defeated in the ratification contest, what did he do? George Mason and other founders of the day, George Mason, another great Virginian, said we should revolt. We ought to start organizing a secession attempt. They got us into this. They said we could get out of it, and they did. Let's get out of it. So I organized the people, let's get out of it. Henry would have none of it. He said, no, they beat us fair and square legally. They cast the votes. We lost. But all is not lost because we need amendments to this wicked document, and he really thought it was wicked, to the Constitution. How many of you knew that Patrick Henry was the driving force behind the Bill of Rights? It started in the Virginia Assembly in November of 1788, led by Henry. It was Henry's tireless efforts to demand that the Bill of Rights be ratified or be sent to Congress, that they be proposed, sent back to the states for ratification. That's the reason we have them today. Mason was one of the authors, helped write and draft. Madison did most of the actual formal writing of it. But here's another part of the Bill of Rights that you probably don't know. If you're looking for a little guidance from the founders, again, we need calls to action, folks. They used Article 5. We're told today Article 5 won't work. You'll never get people to go along with it. It's all antiquated and archaic. It won't work. And it's never been tried. That's not true. It was used. It was used to get the Bill of Rights. In the debate in Richmond, Virginia in 1788, Patrick Henry in his floor speeches kept citing Article 5. This is our new government. This is how we can change it. At the end of his life, Henry only came to endorse the Union because George Washington begged him to. When the nullification resolutions were passing through the Virginia Assembly in 1798, Henry wanted to support the effort. Washington wrote him a letter and begged him not to the point where it made Henry go out underneath a tree at Red Hill and cry. And then he mounted a horse and he rode to Charlottesville and led an effort to elect legislators or candidates that would not vote to secede and would try and vote down the nullification attempt. This is how Washington's influence, that's the kind of man that Washington was. He changed Patrick Henry's mind. There's something else you don't know about Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry may have been one of the most devout and greatest Christian gentlemen of the founding era. Gentlemen in this room, gentlemen listening afterwards, following is directed at you. Ladies, hold their feet to the fire. In a letter to Archibald Blair in the last days of his life on the 8th of January, 1799, Henry clears his vision up a little bit and gives us a vision for the future. It's kind of lengthy here, but I think you'll get the point of why the letter is must read today. It's very difficult to find. It's not published, but I will make a copy of it available on my website after the speech today. Quote, "And whilst I see the dangers that threaten ours," he's talking about our country, the United States, "from her," he's talking about France, "France's intrigues and her arms, I am not so much alarmed as at the apprehension of her destroying the great pillars of all government and of social life. I mean virtue, morality, and religion. This is the armor, my friend, and this alone that renders us invincible. These are the tactics we should study. How many Liberty conferences have you been to where you've been asked to study virtue, morality, and religion? Patrick Henry is calling you from beyond the grave. These are not taboo. We're Christian people, most of us. This is what we're missing in our politics and why we can't get things done, because we are not a people of virtue. We may be virtuous in this room. We elect people that reflect us. We are a sick culture, ladies and gentlemen. We can only fix it by returning to those values. And I want to just let Patrick Henry speak to you from beyond the grave again. If we lose these, morality, religion, virtue, if we lose these, we are conquered, fallen indeed. In vain may France show and vaunt her diplomatic skill and brave troops. So long as our manners and principles remain sound, there is no danger. But believing as I do that these are in danger, that infidelity in its broadest sense, under the name of philosophy, is fast spreading, and that under the patronage of French manners and principles, everything that ought to be dear to man is covertly but successfully assailed. Or if he could see the 21st century. I feel the value of those men among us who hold out to the world the idea that our continent is to exhibit an originality of character, and that instead of that imitation and inferiority which the countries of the old world have been in the habit of exacting from the new, we shall maintain that high ground upon which nature has placed us, and that Europe will alike cease to rule us and give us modes of thinking. Henry closes one of his final letters that he wrote to Mr. Archibald with a final thought, a call to something beyond politics, a call to us as Christian gentlemen to perfect our manners and always strive for virtue, which is why we started with Confucius. Tell John Marshall I love him, because he felt and acted as a Republican, little r. I wonder if we were doing sign language if she would do little r. Tell Marshall I love him because he felt and acted as a Republican, as an American. I am too old and infirm ever again to undertake public concerns. He was suffering from stomach cancer, by the by, at the time. He died by drinking a vial of mercury. It instantly killed him. But he was told, look, you'll either survive it, it'll kill the cancer, or it'll kill you. It killed him. I am too old and infirm ever again to undertake public concerns. I live much retired amidst a multiplicity of blessings from that gracious ruler of all things, to whom I owe unceasing acknowledgments for his unmerited goodness to me. And if I was permitted to add to the catalog one other blessing, it should be that my countrymen should learn wisdom and virtue, and in this their day to know the things that pertain to their peace. Farewell, I am, dear sir, yours eternally, Patrick Henry. So what is Henry saying to us? What was he saying to Mr. Archibald? He was saying that, sir, politics is not going to fix our problem. Politics is not going to preserve our people. Our government is not going to preserve our people, even though we believe it to be the greatest on earth, the most fine and pure. What Mr. Henry was saying is that good men of character and virtue, which we possessed in huge quantities here on these shores, would preserve our liberties. We're at a Liberty conference, correct? Liberty lovers, you need conservators. Conservators, we need liberty lovers. Let's make a deal. I call for a truce. This is how we reclaim our government, by reclaiming our people and the goodness in our people. And so in the grand scheme of things, ladies and gentlemen, the task at hand is not one of politics. It's not one of issues. It's one of character. Character, that's what matters. Russell Kirk, and I heard Dan McCarthy talking about the great Russell Kirk, the last great voice of the conservatism that was practiced before the war team invaded and took over the movement, once said that once upon a time, there were but few opportunities for conservatives, but today, there are now millions of conservative opportunists. Some say, you've heard this I'm sure, the same things are happening in the liberty movement. And while that may be partially true, doesn't tell the full story. But it does throw up a cautionary flag and brings us back to our dialogue about character. The great men of character known as the founders had conferences just as we are having here today. And we know their conferences by a few famous distinctions. Let me tick some off for you. Second Continental Congress of the United States, Declaration of Independence. The Confederation Congress, Articles of Confederation. The Federal Convention of 1787, Constitution. The Virginia Assembly of 1798, Virginia and Kentucky Resolutions. The Hartford Conventions, petitions from northern states to secede in 1814. The South Carolina Convention of December the 17th, 1860. South Carolina votes for their God-given natural right, secession. Secession is not a dirty word, by the way. It comes from a Latin term, secedere, meaning to withdraw. When I finish with this speech, I'm going to secede to the bar. I hope you will join me. The point is that these men met in conventions to do things beyond air grievances over what was done to them. It's time for us to get reacquainted with this political formality and blare the clarion call loud and clear for all to hear. Whether we call for an Article 5 convention to propose amendments to the U.S. Constitution, whether we affix our names to the Montpelier Manifesto, Vermont's call for a convention to consider altering their form of government. Yes, that means for them to secede. No, I don't agree with the Vermont socialists politically, but I do believe in their right to choose their own form of government. What do you have liberty for if you can't choose